Hey, this is Jerry with On Point Wildlife Removal. If you think you might have critters in your attic like squirrels, bats, rats, or raccoons, give us a call today. We'll come out, we'll take a look, we'll give you a free quote to get them out, to seal up your home, and clean up whatever mess they left behind. We're locally owned and operated, and we're fully licensed and insured.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. On this rainy Saturday afternoon, this is Robert with Space Coast Rocket. Going to give everybody a couple seconds to get in here. But anyway, the purpose of this Facebook Live is to try to address some of the questions that I've been getting about the lawsuit that I filed against the Supervisor of Elections, Tim Bobanic. Why I filed that lawsuit, what led to it, and what's happening as a result. Because of the storm right now, I had to leave my house and come over to Starbucks to try to get a connection. But if you have any questions about this lawsuit or why it's been filed, or if you don't understand it, a lot of people don't understand how candidates actually end up on the ballot. If you've never run for office, you wouldn't necessarily need to understand how someone ends up on the ballot that you get in your mail, or that when you go to the voters booth and see the ballot, how those names actually got there. And there's a process. There's a process to get on the ballot, and it's called qualifying. There's different ways to do it. Some people pay a fee depending on the office that they're running for. Some people try to collect petitions, getting signatures from registered voters saying, hey, I would like to see this person on the ballot. If they can do that, then they don't have to pay the fee. But that's a lot of hard work. And because of that, some people just pay the fee. But that has nothing to do with the qualification paperwork that is subject to this lawsuit. For this lawsuit, when you go to turn in your documents as a candidate to the Supervisor of Elections office, you have to turn in specific qualifying documents. One of those documents is an oath. It's a candidate oath, and it differs for each individual office or categories of offices. What the supervisor's job is during the qualifying week, what they call it, is June 10th through June 14th is the qualifying week this year. During that week, all the candidates show up to the Supervisor of Elections office and they drop off their paperwork. The supervisor's job is to take that paperwork, they look at it, and they have what's called a ministerial duty to determine if that paperwork is complete. They don't get to determine if the paperwork is accurate. They don't get to determine if the paperwork is false. Their only job is to look at that document and determine if it has been completed. The reason I bring up whether they don't get to determine if it's false is because that can be something that's something that often needs to be adjudicated by a judge or by a commission if that information is false. It can't be on the responsibility of the Supervisor of Elections to determine if someone's campaign finances are correct or something like that. And to give you an even better understanding, back in 2020, when I was helping with a campaign for someone running against State Representative Randy Fine, Randy Fine had a write-in candidate qualify to be in his race. And the reason that's important is because in Florida, we have what's called a closed primary state. So if only Republicans are on the ballot and there are no Democrats, that means there will be no general election for that office. That means if there's only Republicans and no one else running, that ballot, that election will be open to everyone to vote for. Republicans and Democrats don't want the other parties deciding who gets to run for their party. So what they'll do in Florida, which is legal, is put in a write-in candidate whose name won't appear on the ballot, but you can write their name in on the ballot. Those people will never, ever win. They hardly get maybe 50 votes in an election. But what it does is close that ballot so that only Republicans or only Democrats can vote in that race. That's what happened in 2020. The problem is with Randy Fine's situation, he used a kid, an 18-year-old kid named Patrick Unger, Thomas Patrick Unger, who's working on his campaign right now and is being paid by his campaign right now. But apparently in 2020, he was running against Randy Fine as a write-in candidate. Now, we filed a complaint that the kid was not even old enough to be a state representative. In the state of Florida, if you want to be a state representative, which is the office that he was running for, you have to be at least 21 years old. So I said, hey, did you guys even look at this? This guy can't even be a state representative. And what they explained to me and what I'm explaining to you now is that is not their job to determine. Their job is to determine, was the paperwork turned in and was it complete? The answer to that question was yes. Now, the candidate signs under penalty of perjury that the information that they've submitted is accurate and that they are eligible to hold office. So that kid submitted that he understood what the requirements were and that he was eligible. Now that's perjury because he knows that he was not old enough to do it, but that's who Randy Fine had to do it. But because it had nothing to do with was the form complete or not, he was able to remain on the ballot unless someone filed a lawsuit, which is what I've done in this case, to stop that from happening. This case in particular, it was brought to my attention by a citizen that did a public records request of some of the candidates that were running for office in the Republican Party, that some of their documents were not complete. And that person brought that to me to ask me, were the deficiencies that were on that form okay? And they were not. They were not okay. The form was incomplete. A lot of forms were incomplete. That person took that same form and some other forms to the supervisor of elections, the current supervisor of elections, Tim Bobanic, and brought that to his attention. At that point in time, the supervisor of elections, who's sworn an oath to uphold the integrity of our elections and our election laws, told that person, just don't say anything about it. Now that's a problem. Whether you like the current supervisor of elections or not, whether you want him to be elected for the next supervisor of elections or not, has nothing to do with whether or not he's currently doing his job as the supervisor of election and enforcing those laws. It has zero to do with that. Me reporting on something that the supervisor of elections or any other elected official has failed to do has nothing to do with the campaign that they may or may not be running. If the supervisor of elections was to get a DUI tonight and get arrested, and I reported on that, that does not mean that I'm trying to help John Tobiah. That means the supervisor of election did something, he broke the law, and I reported the news. That's all that it means. Now, whether or not you like him or whether you like John Tobiah, that's up to you. But it's not Robert Burns trying to help or hurt any other candidate. I'm just doing the job that I've decided that I want to do and report the news and investigate these types of things so that you know about them. And I think we have a good track record of investigating corruption or elected officials not doing what they say they're going to do or doing things illegally and getting results from that. You can ask former Commissioner Brian Lober about that if you don't think that that's the case. But that's what's happening here. We have a supervisor of elections who was presented a document that was insufficient, and he told them to be quiet about it instead of just fixing the problem. So what happened after that? It gets brought to my attention. I write an article about it, and then I officially emailed the supervisor of elections to make sure that he knew in his official capacity and a public record and an email from me to his public office and to his attorney that I am aware of this deficiency. You are now aware of this deficiency. Are you going to take the proper measures to correct it? His response was that that individual would remain on the ballot as a qualified candidate and it will not change unless someone sues him, which is what I did as a result of that statement. Let's talk about the form for a minute. I'm going to attempt to try to share my screen here. Let's see. Because I think that it will be helpful so you can see this and understand exactly what it is. So this is the lawsuit. Now, the lawsuit is 50-something pages, but I'm getting down to the exhibits, okay? So this is the form, all right? This is the candidate oath form that has to be filled out. It's not very complicated. It asks for very minimal information, and for it to be complete, all you gotta do is fill it in. You don't even have to put the right information. You can say, my name is Superman Burns on there. It doesn't matter to the supervisor of election as long as that is filled out, okay? So the part that comes into question here, the name as it appears on the ballot, what office are you running for, committee man or committee woman, Brevard County, you gotta fill that out. I swear that I'm a member of the whatever party. This right here, do you owe any money or fees? Yes, I do, or no, I don't. You got to check one. Then you got to sign it, put your phone number and email if you have them, and then your address. And then you got to get it notarized right here. So this is all part of the form. The notary has to sign it, stamp it, date it, and say how you are identified. If all those things are done and you turn it in before the end of the deadline, which is June 14th at noon, then you will be qualified for the ballot. Now, if you have a nickname that you want to use, for example, Randy Fine's real name is Randall, so he has to fill out this form because he wants to go by Randy. So he also has to fill that out, and then he has to do the same thing. He has to have it notarized and dated. This is where the problem comes. So this is State Representative Randy Fine's document. Everything has been filled out until you get to here, the date. This is the only place on the form that calls for a date. Otherwise, we don't know when this was done. This could have been done in 2010. We don't know because there's no date on it. The person responsible for dating that is the notary. Now, the notary that he used, which is another issue that the lawsuit also addresses, is his legislative aide, Nancy Bernier, basically his secretary. She's a notary. So she notarized his documents. She notarized a lot of documents. She notarized them for his wife, for his parents, for his mom that he says has dementia. She notarized it for her. Because what he's trying to do is trying to get a whole bunch of people to qualify so that he can have votes. He wants to run for the chair of the party. But that's irrelevant of this lawsuit. But he's got his own legislative aide notarizing the document. But what she failed to do was put a date, okay? That means it's legally insufficient. That means when it gets to the supervisor of elections office and they take a look at it, all they're doing is looking to see that this stuff is filled out. That's all they got to do. And it's very obvious that the date is missing. Now, I personally believe she didn't just miss it, it was skipped. And we can get into that later because she goes on and fills out the rest of it after that. And she notarized about 10 more forms, and she didn't miss the date on any of those people's, but she missed them on both, not just on this page, but then on the second page, she missed it again. She's been a notary for a lot of years. There's not a lot to do. You stamp it, you sign it, you write the county, check the date, you check how you saw them, whatever. She missed it on both of them. That's a problem. Because of that, and because he waited until, this is when the supervisor of elections office received it, June 14th at 11:04 a.m. Qualification ended at noon. Now, what's specific about Randy Fine is that he was not even in the country during this time. Remember at the beginning, I said that qualifying started at June 10th and it ended at June 14th. Now, let me skip ahead a little bit because I'll show you, because Randy Fine showed us himself. On June 7th, he was on his way to another taxpayer-funded trip to Israel. Okay, he's telling you he's not there. He's not here. He's there. Qualification started on June 10th. June 7th, he's gone. And then on June 14th, he's got some big news to share today. He's got his feet up with him chilling in Israel on other people's dime. On June 14th, qualifying day, he's running for office. He had one of his volunteers drop off the paperwork. Okay, so that's Randy Fine. That's just one of the people. Now, what happens? So what? So you identify this deficiency. We have. The supervisor's office missed it, or maybe they didn't miss it. Maybe they just ignored it. But we bring it to their attention. What can you do now that the qualification period has ended? Well, you can call that person and let them know that, hey, we made a mistake. Your paperwork was not correct. You're now disqualified. You're no longer allowed on the ballot. And that's what the law requires the supervisor of elections to do. He does not get to make the discretionary choice of deciding who gets to get by with mistakes and who doesn't. And let me just talk about that, because that's kind of the so what of this. Okay, let me explain to you why this is so important, because to a lot of people, they're just like, so what? He's just missing the date. The person that sits at that desk, which Tim Bobanic fired, by the way. Yeah, I anticipate seeing a bunch of these messages, trying to talk about me. We can talk about that at another time, but today is about the supervisor of elections. The reason why this is important is because that if I'm the person that's sitting at that desk, the one that he just fired, her name was Kathleen Miller, and she's accepting those documents, she has a tremendous amount of power. And let me give you an example of why she does. Say, for example, that I had that job and I was sitting at that desk. My job is to accept the candidate's paperwork and look at it and make sure it's good to go. And Randy Fine walks in and he says, hey, Mr. Burns, here's my paperwork. I'm running for whatever job it is. And I look at it and I say, you're good to go, Mr. Fine. Good luck on your election. And he did that on Monday. Okay. On Friday, well, let's say he did that, but I don't like Randy Fine. Okay. And I don't want him to be elected to whatever office it is. So if I have the ability and the power, because of the position that I'm in, and I'm just speaking hypothetically, to see a mistake on that form and just be quiet about it. I don't have to say a word. I just pretend like, oh, you're good. And I'll just act like we made a mistake later, because on June 14th at 12 p.m., qualification is over. It's over. And the candidates cannot submit any corrections. They cannot submit any additions. It's done. Whatever's been submitted is done. And I can look at then at 12:05, I can pull up that paperwork and be like, oh my gosh, we made a mistake, Mr. Fine. You forgot to put your address on the document and we missed it. Unfortunately, it's too late. And because of that, you're no longer on the ballot. That's the power that person has. Before a vote is even cast, that person can sway an entire election by picking and choosing who they want to enforce those standards on. Does that make sense? So if I'm corrupt, and I'm not saying the supervisor is, and I'm not saying the person in that job is, but I'm explaining why that it has to be enforced very strictly and very uniformly. Because if you don't do it, then you allow room for corruption. You allow room for someone to say, oh man, my buddy was running and they forgot to put the date on there. But I'm just going to pretend like we didn't see that because he's gone out of the country and we'll just let it slide. He can't come back and sign it. And that was the case in Randy Fine's position, because he was out of the country. He told us all he was out of the country. So if the supervisor saw his form and saw that it was lacking, Randy Fine can't fix it. Let me let you know this. The law also states that if the supervisor's office does find a problem with the paperwork, by law, they have to notify the candidate within a reasonable amount of time so that they can correct it. They don't have to help them do it. They just got to let them know, hey, there's a problem with your form. If you want to be on the ballot, you got to get it done. You got to get it done before Friday at noon. They have to do that. In Randy's case, because he tried to be slick and waited till the last 30 minutes or so to turn his paperwork in, and he was out of the country, if he makes a mistake on his paperwork, which he did, He can't fix it because he's not here. It has to be notarized. His notary has to do it in person, and he's not there to sign the document. So what happened? They just let it go anyway. Even though it was deficient, he still qualified. And meant when someone brings it to their attention, and then the supervisor himself says, just be quiet about it, now we have a big problem. It would be one thing if your office missed it, right? And then you took responsibility and said, oh my gosh, she's new, she must not have saw it, she's getting hundreds of documents, whatever the case may be. But then you fix the error. Firing the person doesn't fix the error. When you fire the person, you basically substantiate everything we've just said, because the reason you're firing her is because you did an audit. This is the supervisor's own words that he quoted to Florida Today. You did an audit and found out there was a whole lot of errors that were made. Right now, this lawsuit only talks about 3 people. It talks about Randy Fine. It talks about another Republican candidate for the same position for state committeeman, Wayne Twitty. Wayne Twitty actually happens to work on the Republican Elections Integrity Committee. Let me show you this, because this is just something you can't make up. Let's go look at Wayne Twitty, the Elections Integrity guy. So we did Randy Fine's form. Here's Twitty's form. Now, you can see he's missing a whole lot more information. He's missing his email address, he's missing his street address, his city, his state, his zip code. And then here, Kathleen Miller, the person who was just fired by Tim Bobanic for not doing her job the right way, notarized the form for him. And when she did that, she failed to put the year. So it is also not dated. Now, notaries are also fall under very specific state statutes on how they have to notarize documents. And the statute is very clear that if they don't date it, that's one of the requirements, the document is not notarized. There's no question about that at all. Otherwise, there's no way to authenticate the form. The problem I have with the supervisor's office notarizing these forms, and it's not in this lawsuit, but they're effectively filling out the form for the candidate, because all this is part of the form. When the candidate shows up to the supervisor's office, this stuff is supposed to already be done. All right. They're not supposed to be filling out the form for the candidate, because once they start doing that, then they're inherently taking responsibility for what's on this form. They can't do that. That's up to the candidate to bring them the form. They're just supposed to check it. Now, there's another thing to think about with this. When you want to get a document notarized, unless you know a notary, you got to go somewhere and pay somebody $10 or whatever the fee may be to get that document notarized. Now, for some reason, the Supervisor of Elections office has decided that they want to provide this service to the candidates. And even though they're not providing it accurately or legally, but they want to provide this service. Now, if Randy shows up and they're like, oh, you didn't notarize your form yet, we can do it for you. And then they do it. And then I haven't had my form notarized yet. So I say, oh, I didn't know the supervisor's office was doing it. Let me show up and they can notarize it for me. But let's say Kathleen's not there that day, or she's at lunch and they say, sorry, Mr. Burns, you got to go somewhere and get your form notarized because our person's not here. Well, now you've just created an advantage and a disadvantage between 2 political candidates, because now I have to go out and spend $10 to get my form notarized when my opponent got it done for free. In my opinion, that's what's called an in-kind contribution. And then also you have the issue that the Supervisor of Elections office is filling these forms out for candidates. And in this case with Wayne Twitty, besides the fact that he didn't even bother to put his address, the notary messed it up. So who's at fault? It's overall the responsibility of the candidate to ensure that their documents are correct. But what are you supposed to do when the daggone Supervisor of Elections office is messing up the forms themselves? But he is on the ballot. The guy for election integrity. He's on the ballot despite 33% of this form not even being filled out. Again, like I said in the beginning, the supervisor's only job is to take a look at this form and is it complete? If it's complete, you're qualified. Anybody, my youngest daughter can look at this form and say, Daddy, this isn't complete. I know. And he shouldn't be on the ballot. But he is. And when it was brought to his attention, they said, sue me. So that's what we did. Now, let me show you something else. Some people are questioning, does he have the authority to do it? Now, let's go back to the lawsuit. In Citrus County, there's another person. Let me show you one part of this form real quick, and it's this. This part right here that says statement of outstanding fines, fees, or penalties. Do you owe any money or do you not? You check yes or no. There was a candidate in Citrus County running for office, and he forgot to check this box. No, I do not. He turned in his paperwork, and the Citrus County Supervisor of Elections missed it. They missed that he didn't check that, which is understandable. That's a smaller part, but it is part of the form that has to be completed. So what happened was, and I talked about it up here in the lawsuit, Citrus County disqualification case. When the Supervisor of Elections, her name is Mo Baird, found out about that discrepancy with him not completing that one little checkbox, his name was Jesse Rumson, she called him and let him know that it was their mistake, but you're disqualified because your document is insufficient. And she admitted that it was their mistake, but that's how important this job is. So because that one little thing wasn't checked, that means the form's not complete, and that means they got to come off the ballot because you have to enforce it strictly and fairly. Now, what happened in Brevard County was, you got these two guys that are on the ballot, Randy Fine and Wayne Twitty, with clearly deficient paperwork. Now there's another woman named Joan Taddy. She's a Democrat, and she was running for a precinct state or precinct committee woman. She didn't have an opponent. All she had to do was turn in her documents, and if she didn't have an opponent, then she would be elected. If you don't have an opponent, there's no need to have an election. You're the only person running. She turned in her paperwork on a Monday, okay? She turned it in on Monday. On Friday, she had plenty of time to be notified about any deficiencies and be able to make those corrections. So she turned it in on Monday, which was the first day of the qualifying period. On Friday, the Supervisor of Elections, Tim Bobanic, called the chair of the Democratic Party and let her know that Joan Taddy's documents were insufficient. She was missing the stamp for the notary. So because of that, after qualifying had already ended, the Supervisor of Elections disqualified her. And there was nothing that Joan Taddy could do at that point because qualification was over. So that's two Republicans that were exceptions were made for, or it was missed, and then they were made for again, are still on the ballot, versus one Democrat who had a very similar deficiency, or maybe even less of a deficiency, and was kicked off the ballot. So now you have the appearance of impropriety and discrimination between parties. Now, Florida Today did an article about this, and Tim Bobanic gave them a quote that there were a total of 4 people that were disqualified. He says that 3 of them were Republicans. Now, we requested that information. We haven't gotten it. I called the supervisor's office and asked for that information. They wouldn't tell me. I did a public records request for their documents. I haven't got it. What I did do was a public records request for everybody's documents in the Republican Party for their races. I said I wanted to see the documents, whether you were qualified or not qualified. If they submitted documents, I wanted a copy of the documents. The supervisor's office finally fulfilled that request. I know from speaking to the chair of the Republican Party that one of the people who were disqualified, one of the 3 Republicans, name was Georgette Hoppenbauer. She was kicked off because her form was inaccurate or not complete. When I scrolled through those hundreds of forms that they sent me, she's not there. The reason that's important is because if he's saying he kicked off 4 people, then I need to look at those 4 people's forms that were kicked off to see why they were kicked off. What deficiency was on their form compared to the deficiencies that were on Randy Fine's and Wayne Twitty's form? Are they the same, or is it something completely different? You know, did they write in crayon? I don't even know if that matters. But we need to be able to compare the people who were qualified with deficiencies to the people who were disqualified with deficiencies to see that if there was some kind of impropriety going on, some favoritism going on. Is he afraid of Randy Fine, that he's going to make a Facebook post about him, calling him anti-Semitic if he disqualifies him? Who knows what it is? We don't know, because we can't see the forms because they haven't provided them to us, even though they said that they did. But it gets worse. So after we go through all those forms of all the candidates, we found, and let me show you. I'll show you this one. A whole lot more people. A whole lot more people with forms that are all jacked up. So I went through all these forms. These are the ones that I did provide. And we can assume that all these people were added to the ballot or elected without opposition, because there's just too many. He says he disqualified 4. He says 3 of them were Republicans. Here I have 14 more people. This person didn't put the county. Like I said, this is not hard, but it's important. This person didn't put the county. This person didn't put the email. Another one without the email. This person, again, no date. No telephone, no email. No date. No date. No address anywhere. This is not hard to see these deficiencies. Nothing. No date at all. No phone number, no email address. No nothing. They just got their name up here, this stuff. They missed everything down here, still qualified. How? How is this person qualified? Same thing here. And here. So you can see that, and this one here looks like the Kathleen Miller lady that was fired. Looks like she filled this part out for her. All right, because everything that Mary filled in is in blue with very neat handwriting. And then all of a sudden down here, it turns to black with this very not neat handwriting. But it looks exactly like the stuff down here in the notary. And then you're still missing more things in the notary itself. But as far as we understand, this person was still qualified. How? So that's 14 more people potentially that have been qualified for this election that should have been rejected from the beginning. Now, it gets worse. Then we learned that the people that are subject to this lawsuit, the 3 people mentioned, the supervisors of elections office, lost the documents. They don't have them. So there's some other questions about Randy Fine's signature. Is it even his signature, or did his aide just sign it for him? There's a lot of questions about things surrounding his form that aren't being asked about other people's form, just because of his traveling and what he said on Facebook and things like that. But in order to investigate those things to find out, is this really his signature? What's really going on? We need the original documents. But according to the supervisor's office themselves, they lost the documents. They lost the qualifying documents for these candidates. So as a result of that, I filed this emergency motion yesterday, asking the judge at this point to step in and say, look, because we've asked for the documents, they didn't give them to us. So I'm asking the judge to make Tim Bobanic bring him the documents. Show me. The judge can do that. I also asked the judge to conduct an immediate audit, because if there's 14 people that I just saw just by skimming through the documents that haven't completed the form and have still been qualified, We haven't even looked at the Democrats yet, and we haven't looked at the other races, even the supervisor's race. We haven't seen his documents. We don't know if his documents are accurate. And it's a very valid question because he's fired the person that's responsible for checking if they're valid for not doing her job. And we don't know how many people, in addition to the 2 that are on the ballot now, plus these 14 that we just looked at, are on the ballot. I mean, there's no telling who's on the ballot right now that shouldn't be. And over 7,000 people have already voted with their absentee ballot, with their mail ballot, and people are still voting. What happens if the judge makes the decision that we are correct and that the supervisor has to follow the law? All right, let me take this off. And I see a whole bunch of comments. I'm gonna look here at the questions in a minute. What happens if the judge sides with us if we win? Well, the judge can say what we filed is called a writ of mandamus. A writ of mandamus is a petition where a citizen is asking the court to force a public official, like the supervisor, to do their job. We're saying this is where you're not doing their job. They're saying they're not going to do it. We're asking the court to make them do it, which is what Tim Bobanic asked us to do, or told us that we needed to do. So that's what we did. If the judge says, well, you will disqualify these 2 candidates, and there may be more at this point because of the other 14 that we just saw whose documents are also in question now. That means that the ballot, any votes for those people don't count. What also has to happen is that Tim Bobanic will have to send out a letter to everyone explaining that a vote for Randy Fine or a vote for Wayne Twitty will not count because they've been disqualified. And then they will have to put up a sign at every polling station where people go in to early vote or to on election day to vote, saying a vote for Randy Fine won't count because he's been disqualified. That's what will have to happen. Now, for the people who've already voted, those people can request to have those ballots voided and request a new ballot, especially if they voted for one of those 2 people. And they probably would want to do that because why waste your vote? But that's what has to happen. But for some reason, the supervisor of elections has decided that despite these obvious deficiencies, the only remedy that he saw appropriate was to conduct an audit and fire his staff member. But he's still allowing the people that are not qualified, that submitted the wrong documents, to be placed on the ballot and remain there, despite it being within his authority. He can do this on his own, within his authority, to remove those people who are illegally on the ballot from the ballot. There may be a lot of reasons for that. Everyone knows that Randy Fine is a bully. He brags about being a bully. He takes vengeance on people that defy him, and I can't imagine the conversations that he's having with Tim Bobanic right now. And that's a lot of pressure, and I understand that probably more than anybody else does. What Randy Fine is capable of when you try to stand up against him. But when you're an elected official, and keep in mind, Tim Bobanic's not an elected official. He's been appointed. He was appointed to this position when Lori Scott resigned or when she retired. So this is his first time running for election. So, but when you're put in that position, when you accept that position, you're accepting that responsibility and you're swearing that you will uphold those laws. That's what you're doing. So when we pointed out to you that, hey, you've made hopefully a mistake and you missed these things, the appropriate response is to correct it, not to tell a private citizen, you got to sue me in order to make me do my duty. So that's what we're doing. I'm going to scroll. I see a bunch of these comments. I'm scroll through them real quick. But I hope that clears up. A lot of people don't understand how you get on the ballot. That's how you get on the ballot. That's why this whole process is important. Project 2025. It's money. It's always money. I'll address something else. There was a picture. Somebody took a picture. I know who it was. His name's Richard Nink or something like that. He's the chair of the Republican Election Integrity Committee. he took a picture of me at the Nomads Cafe, the new restaurant that just opened up in O'Galley. I highly recommend it if you haven't been there. I go there about every other day. But I was there working, and I saw Commissioner John Tabaya, and I spoke with him. Those people, or Richard, decided to take a video of that and take pictures of me walking out and Tabaya walking out, and created this entire narrative that somehow I'm a secret agent or something working for John Tabaya. Now, if I need to meet with John Tabaya or with anybody, with any elected official, I don't need to do it at happy hour in the newest restaurant with in front of hundreds of people if I'm trying to hide something. Okay, now doing what I do, I speak to elected officials every single day, all day long. That's what I do. John Tabaya happens to be my county commissioner. And if you've been following us for a while, you know that we've got a lot of things done in this county, and I get it done through our elected officials. For example, Space Coast Daily, you guys all saw the video. We went out there and interviewed this guy live at their Space Coast Daily Festival, whichever one it was, and he had a convicted child rapist out there handing out snow cones to kids. And he's a registered sex offender. We found out about it. We went out there and interviewed the guy at the fair. He's not supposed to be within 1,000 feet of a park, but he's on Space Coast Daily Park handing out snow cones to kids. Now, I saw that as a problem, and I think most people would see that as a problem, especially if you're bringing your kids to the fair and you think it's a safe place, because sex predators aren't supposed to be within 1,000 feet of it. Well, I called the police after we went out there and interviewed the guy live, and he admitted who he was and a whole bunch of other things. The police let us know about a loophole in the county ordinance that says that, okay, yeah, the state law says you're not allowed within 1,000 feet of schools, daycares, playgrounds, etc., unless, and the county added this stipulation, unless you're gainfully employed, which means that every single person at Space Coast Daily Park could be a convicted rapist, child predator, and be legally allowed to work at that fair. So the person that's strapping your kid down in that Ferris wheel or whatever ride it is could be a child rapist and has a legal right to work there because of the way that the county ordinance was written, with that exception. When we found that out, I went to my county commissioner, let him know the craziness about this ordinance. County Commissioner John Tabaya is my county commissioner. He checked everything. He couldn't believe what we found. We couldn't believe what we found, and the cop couldn't believe it either. He checked everything. It was true. And then he took immediate action to get that law changed. And we did get that law changed. That's what we do. We talk to people, we find a problem, we investigate it, we get the evidence, and then we try to get a solution for that problem. That's all I ever try to do. That's what we tried to do in this case. We found out about a problem, we addressed the issue, we let the appropriate person know about the problem, and that person should have taken action. This person chose not to take action, even though the law tells him and requires him to do so. So because he chose not to take action, we took further action to have the judge step in and take an action. So that's where we're at right now. The petition has been allowed to go forward. The judge ordered that there was enough on the facts. It's called a prima facie case. There were enough facts there that he agreed with that require a response. And so my job was to get everybody served. Wayne Twitty's been served. The supervisor of elections been served. And everybody knows how serving Randy Fine goes. He's hiding under his desk or jumping in a pool or something. He does everything he can to not be served, but he's getting served. I think he's already been served. We got a pretty good process server. So after they've been served, they get 5 days to file their response. And then after they file their response, then we have a hearing. And then after the hearing, the judge will make his decision. And that's where we'll be. Either the judge will decide that these people need to be removed from the ballot, or they'll decide that it's too late and leave it alone. We'll see. But I'm not going to let it go unchecked. I'm not going to allow an elected official or a public official to blatantly disregard our laws or disregard citizens when we bring it to your attention. I have the ability to do what I did, and I did it. I don't gain anything from this other than the satisfaction of trying to be of a service to the community and letting them know what's going on, because most people don't understand any of this. But it costs me tremendously to do these things, because ever since that day that I filed that lawsuit, it's been an attack Robert Burns, fest. Randy Fine immediately posted that I was in some gang shooting or something, just some crazy, crazy stuff all the time. And I have to deal with it. But I keep dealing with it because I'm used to it at this point. This 5 years coming up this month, I've been doing this. And I've been dealing with the same stuff for 5 years. I'm still here, I'm still doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. So I appreciate you guys' support. I understand some people don't agree. Some people think other things are going on. That's on you. I don't care. I don't care what you think, whether you think I'm doing this to help somebody or to hurt somebody. I've been pretty consistent with what I do. I have people that help me with, reporting about the space program and some of the education stuff. But for stuff like this, it's just me. And it takes a tremendous amount of time and resources for me to do these things. It took me 60 hours of my life to write that lawsuit, because I'm not a lawyer. So I had to research how to do it. I can't afford to go hire a lawyer to do these things. Fortunately, I have lawyers that support me, like Jessica Travis, and we'll take a look at things when I like, hey, does this make sense? Did I write this right? Is this the way you format this? Those types of things. But doing the bones, doing the groundwork, that's on me, because I can't afford to pay a lawyer to do it. So I'm gonna keep on doing that. I'm gonna keep on taking the shots. I'll be all right. There's a lot of allegations people make about me. I deal with my own things, and I take responsibility for my actions, just like I ask other people to take responsibility for theirs. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's claiming to be perfect, but I do expect you, especially as an elected official that's sworn to uphold these laws and to serve the public, that you do that. All right. Are you pulling Bobanic paperwork? I asked for his paperwork. I haven't gotten it. There's a lot of things that I've asked for that we haven't gotten, and I don't know that we will get them. That's why I'm asking the judge to ask for them. I want to know what the county and public are going to do that predators don't get through these loopholes, and what repercussions has Space Coast Daily. The law's already been changed. They changed the law. That loophole is no longer there. And also, Space Coast Daily received a grant, something around $20,000 or so for that fair from the county, taxpayer dollars. So the county also changed the grant policy as a result of that you can't get grants anymore if you are working with or partnering with sex predators. It just makes too much sense, right? But apparently that's controversial. Space Coast Daily filed a lawsuit against me. Randy Fine and other people like to brag about that as if it's something of merit. It's not. They're trying to save face for what they've done. They've been caught publicly, and everyone saw the videos for themselves. It speaks for themselves. The guy's at the park. He's a sex predator. We put all the documents in there, and he took off running. And Space Coast Daily has been working with him for years. Everything's in the article, but they're suing me for defamation because I don't know. They can't accept it, but the facts are the facts. So you can sue anybody for anything. Doesn't mean that what we reported isn't true. It's true. So it just hurts. Let me see. Any other questions? Joan W. exposing the corrupt county IMS. All right. So if there's any other questions, I'll come back and look at this later. But I wanted to come in here and try to clear up some of the confusion, clear up some of the misinformation, and give you guys a better understanding of what's going on, where we're at, and what's next. So we filed that emergency motion. That'll probably be ruled on in the next Monday or Tuesday to see what's happening. And then that's for the emergency motion, but the judge also granted that this be expedited for us, the original petition. So like I said before, they get 5 days to respond, and then a couple days after that, we'll probably have a hearing on it. So we're possibly looking at being in court on Thursday or Friday if things go as fast as they can. So looking forward to that, and hopefully that we get the results that we're looking for, that the supervisor is forced to uphold the law. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I'll try to jump back and look at them. There's other things going on besides this in the county that I'm working on. I'll be putting out another article today about another race up in District 1 for County Commission. There's a lot of things going on, but it's just me working on this stuff. If you guys want to help, let me know. If you're a writer or something like that, or you want to do some investigative work, shoot me a message. I could use the help. If you want to advertise, get your business out there. Last month, we reached 1.1 million people just on our Facebook page. So we have a great reach. I think we had 89,000 views on our articles for last month. So it's definitely getting out there. People are definitely consuming what we're producing. And if your business can benefit from that, then shoot us a message and we'll be happy to partner up with you. Other than that, everybody stay safe this weekend. We've been tracking the storm that's coming in the ocean. It doesn't look like it's going to hit us directly, but we might end up getting some rain from it. That's why we haven't been reporting on that too much. It doesn't look like too much of a threat to us, but it will be a threat to those on the West Coast there. Other than that, stay safe on 95. Don't get any accidents. Be careful. And I don't want to be reporting on any more fatalities, because of some of these wrecks and things. So other than that, everybody enjoy your weekend, and thanks for watching.